Namaskara. Today we are speaking about the topic on formulation of research objectives and hypotheses. As we know, research is a process which consists in a lot of complex steps, and those steps are basically interrelated as integrated with each other. Therefore, without having the knowledge of research process, moving directly to the research objectives and hypotheses may not makes our presentation much effective and more useful. Hence, before getting into research objectives and hypotheses, I'm just trying to brief you about the research process. Prior to that, let me give an overview of today's presentation and the content of the presentation of the day. The entire presentation of my session is consisting of 5 aspects. The first aspect is basically focusing about research process, which involves steps and logical sequence of scientific research, and followed by the second aspect of research question, wherein to integrate the research question, I am being stressing 2 simple example which is known to be more popular and the present day scenario. That is one on the vulnerability of COVID-19 on older people and effect of COVID-19 on online teaching and learning ability of the students. And the third aspect of my presentation speaks about hypothesis testing, which consisting the steps involved in testing of hypothesis, and followed by the fourth aspect, that is types of different hypothesis testing, which consisting various types of testing of hypothesis based on the kind of variable and the nature of variable that we have in our research. And at the last juncture, we are having a simple table which is presenting what tool is most appropriate depending upon the kind of variable, the nature of variable. So these are the 5 aspects of my presentation. So through this, I'm trying to complete the aspect of formulation of research question as well as hypothesis. Coming to the first aspect, that is the research process. Research, as we know, it's a process of searching something. Maybe searching something which is existing, but we are giving a new interpretation. Maybe searching which is new thing, or maybe searching to find solution to the existing problem. Therefore, research can be defined as searching something newly, or searching something in a different way what has been searched so far, or finding new thing which does not exist so far. In that way, research is a systematic body of knowledge where attempt by a researcher goes on a scientific approach. Why we use the word scientific approach? Because scientific approach which always help us to draw conclusion, and the conclusion what we drawn in research which is universally applicable. When we say universally applicable, so keeping the other things away from the context of research, if it is applicable to a different time dimension, if it is applicable to the different individuals and at the different span of time, yes, we can able to consider as research as a universal applicability, general applicability. So we should have a time, person and place, the 3 dimension, the place, person, time. If it is do not influence by these 3 aspects, then we say that the statement of the research which is conducted by a researcher is universally acceptable or universally applicable. However, making a universally applicable research in terms of universal law, it is always one of the complex process. Therefore, most of our scientific research, though may not be generally applicable universally, however, with the context of research which is conducted, where it can be applicable, where it can be generally useful. Hence, let's define the research process in a scientific approach manner in the context of social research. What are the steps which in consisting, and what are the steps which are integrated, and how this research process which help us to make a conclusion so that the conclusion can be able to derive a meaningful decision. The first and foremost step of a research process is observation. So why we are starting from observation? Because everybody's life is influenced by day-to-day life activity. So in our day-to-day life activity, we have been experienced strange examples, a strange experience, a new experience, a repetitive experience. So whenever actually we have come up with a new experience, definitely we try to make an attempt so that the attempt can take into a researchable form. So how are we going to observe that? Because if a new thing which is experienced to you, So then a person will always take a cautious steps to observe it and to make a conclusion, to make a decision over it. Therefore, most of our research process always happens through observation. So observation, so either through life experience, either through the broad area of our research where the interested topic can be identified. Observation can be in a different form. It can be like a participatory observation, non-participatory observation. These are the different methods of data collection. But the different methods of data collection are entirely different from the observation of the first step of a research process. Through observation, a researcher can identify a research question, and after identifying a research question, a research area, a researcher may not be having a complete sense, where his sense is partially incomplete because he may not be having a thorough knowledge in the area. Therefore, after having thorough literature review, a researcher can be able to identify what the study made by others and how the study has been conducted, what the methods have been applied by different people in a different span of time, in a different scenario, and what the method they have applied, whether it is universally truth or whether it can be acceptable, whether it can be reliable. Like in a different angle, a researcher can review the literature and critical outside. Once after doing a literature review thoroughly in a critical insight, a researcher can identify the lacuna or deficiency what existing in the existing literature. I mean to say, if a research objectives of a particular research, a particular literature may not be complete, may not be partial, or may not be reliable, or may not be justifiable, in such case, a researcher can state his own research objective. Point number one. And point number two, a researcher can also state by commenting on the methodology followed by other researcher in the existing literature. The methodology applied by a previous research literature may not be justifiable, may not be acceptable by a researcher. Then he can state his own methodology, so through which he can conduct his own research. So therefore, while identifying the existing gap in the existing literature, the problems can be stated by a researcher. Once the research kept what has been identified by a researcher, which can take in the form of a gap, which can be converted into a research definition, research problem. Once a research problem has been defined scientifically in a researchable way, then researcher will move forward again to give a theoretical justification or a theoretical framework to a problem. Why we need a theory? Because a theory is always universally acceptable statement with some limitation, and as well as the theory which describe the behavior or phenomena of the existing scenario. Therefore, any research question or any research process, if it is given theoretical framework, if it is supported by theoretical justification, then the research is easy to carry further. Therefore, a researcher can give a theoretical framework, and through the theoretical framework he can identify the variable based on the theory and based on his research problem, and he can also identify the kind of relationship existing in the variable, and also how a variable can be measured, how a variable can be collected, or how the information about the variable can be collected from the field. Through this, the first step which gives us a lot of insight to a researcher through finding the variable, the kind of variable, nature of variable, the possible relationship exists between the variable, all can be able to give through a theoretical framework, theoretical justification. Once after giving theoretical justification, researcher will be able to formulate an hypothesis. Again, the hypothesis is nothing but a tentative statement which may be true, may not be true until it is empirically proven by a researcher. Therefore, to smoothen the further process of researcher always have a tendency or always have an inclination to state the hypothesis. Once hypothesis stated, again to state the hypothesis, the theoretical framework as well as the problem defined by a researcher is a base. Without knowing the research problem, without knowing the research objective, what a researcher is supposed to do a research, hypothesis cannot be generated. So that the basic crux for the hypothesis or to basic base for the formulating the hypothesis is basically a research problem or else research objective. Once after formulating the research object hypothesis, researcher will formulate the scientific research design, in which he is focusing about the sample designing, the collection of data, and the tool which is useful for his study, and the duration of the entire research project. Once the scientifically if a research design is defined or research design has been designed, then the researcher will move to the real field where he may collect the data and he may use different analytical tools, and after applying those tools he can give interpretation to the data as well as the statistical result obtained by applying the appropriate tools. Once after doing this, he can also justify, he can also test substantially about the hypothesis what has been generated in the process of generation of hypothesis. Because most of our academic research goes in a deductive approach where we are able to deduce, we are able to write a conclusion about the population based upon the sample data. So thus, to draw a conclusion about the population, to come to a conclusion, to deduce about the population, the sample data is very, very essential. Therefore, the testing of hypothesis, which gives us a deductive approach to test the hypothesis. Once after hypothesis has been tested, and all those hypotheses which are sufficient to answer your research question, then we can move further towards writing the report. If what the hypothesis has been tested, if it is not sufficient to answer all the research questions which has arisen in the process of research design, then again the researcher has to go back to the step number 3 and step number 4, and consequently, if a research hypothesis sufficient to answer all the research questions, you move towards the process of writing the report and presenting the research report, and he can take the outcome of the research report in the process of making decision either to a managerial level, either to a policy level at the government level, either to a solution to the problem existing to face the day-to-day life. In this way, the research process goes in a nutshell. Once after knowing the knowledge of research process, so we'll move to the next concept, that our major aspect, how a research objective can be formulated. To formulate a research objective, what the step one will always follow. Again, as we have stated, always the research process goes on observation. Observation can be either by reading, either by keenly observing, either by our life experience, either by conversation with the people and expert in the field. Like the way we can identify some of the issue which is make some sense, which makes them interesting to carry a research. So just on the screen we have a brochure of a World Health Organization which has given a statement, does the new coronavirus affect older people or the younger people also susceptible? So what does it mean? It means that it was presumed that COVID-19 is more vulnerable to the older people. But in the later stages, when the COVID-19 has expanded, has been spread to the different locations, the geographical area of the globe, it is also witnessed that even younger people also been affected through COVID-19. Hence, the WHO and other researchers in the field, they started to think that can we suspect that even younger people also vulnerable to the COVID-19? So now this is the statement made by the WHO. And again this brochure has one more aspect. Older people, yes, they are more vulnerable to the COVID-19, and as well as the people with pre-existing medical condition. So I mean to say the people with some severe illness, the illness in terms of asthma or diabetics or heart disease, they are also vulnerable to the COVID-19. Now there are two things. One is vulnerability of COVID-19 to the older people, and vulnerability of COVID-19 to the people with a pre-existing medical condition. And can we also suspect the younger people also vulnerable to the COVID-19? These are the statements which can be observed on the brochure. Now as a layman, what we do, we go through this observation, we will see this brochure, we see this image, we enjoy, and as well as we also go through the statement, and we think that yes, it may be or it may not be, like the way we can forward. So we take the things as it is, like in a positive way. But the researcher with a research mind, with a normative mind, what he does, he basically think critically. He may start questioning the statement which is observed over on the screen. He may think, does it not? If it is, how it can be substantiated, how it can be proved, and do we have any empirical justification to make such kind of a statement? Hence, in a research angle, what we can do, let us convert this entire scenario in one of the simplest research objective as, let us convert this question into a research objective like vulnerability of COVID-19 on older people and people with pre-existing medical condition. This is one of my research objective to make my study. This is one of the case example, and we have converted the entire statement in a form of an objective. case number 1. Now moving to the case number 2, this is again the COVID-19 impact on global education. As we have seen, the global education has seen a drastic change, especially third world countries, where education has moved from a traditional classroom to a virtual classroom. Now, again, there is a controversy, and there are people and even a student community also raising the question that the virtual classroom is not actually any influencing, is not actually making any good effect to enhance and improve the learning ability of the students. So it is not so effective when compared to classroom teaching. Hence, there is an effect of COVID-19 on global education, but effect in terms of global digital devices and using the digital devices in the process of learning. However, we don't know we are not ensuring that what is the learning ability, what is the effectiveness of learning ability because of digital mode of teaching, because of virtual mode of teaching. Does virtual mode of teaching has same effect on learning ability of the student when compared to traditional mode of teaching? Or does a virtual teaching is much better than traditional teaching in terms of expanding the learning ability or improving the learning ability of the kids or students? Hence, again, based on this image, so I am converting this entire image into a research objective as to examine the effect of COVID-19 pandemic on online education or learning ability. So we can define how you are defining online education, how you are defining effect, in what sense you want to study this objective. So you can give an operation definition for all the variable which is involved in our research objective. Right now I just converted into a form like the effect of COVID-19 on education, on learning ability of the kids. Now, the previous slide and the present slide, which is taken two real aspects of a day-to-day life, which is observed so immensely in recent days, and those two aspects which has been converted into research objective. So now we have day-to-day life experience which is being observed, and this day-to-day life experience which is being put into a research objective, and while formulating the research objective we have been also stating some of the problem. What are the problem? COVID-19, its effect on learning ability. Learning ability in terms of what? In terms of memory capacity, recalling capacity, retention ability of the students, and expanding their skill. So these are the different aspects where learning can happen, learning can have effect on the kids. So these are the effect where we can define. And previous slide, yes, the COVID-19 is impact on older people, that is in terms of age, and younger, that is in terms of age again, and people with health condition, people with pre-existing health condition, that is on their health capacity, health status. Again, we have taken three different scenario: health, younger, elder, age, all the aspect. So by this way, our research question can be moved towards objective, and the objective can be studied by formulating the hypothesis to test it. However, before going directly to how to state an hypothesis, let's say what are the procedure we follow in testing the hypothesis. Generally, to test the hypothesis, we follow several steps. Out of this 8th step is actually predominantly we follow. So they are nothing but formulating the hypothesis. As we know, hypothesis is nothing but a tentative statement. And in this tentative statement, that is hypothesis, can be classified into different types. However, in this context, I am just defining the hypothesis into two forms. One is null hypothesis H0 and alternative hypothesis H1. H0 and H1. H0 is basically a null hypothesis which is always formulated for the sake of rejecting it. So the null hypothesis is always formulated for the sake of rejecting it. Whenever you are rejecting something, you mean that you are accepting something which is opposite to the rejecting statement. So that is called as alternative. So if I am rejecting a statement, it means that something I am accepting simultaneously which is opposite to the statement which I have been rejecting. That's what we say alternative. So now, how to formulate the null hypothesis? Null hypothesis is always formulated in the form of a negation. I mean to say there is no significant relation, there is no influence, there is no impact, there is no difference, there is no effect. Like always, which has to be formulated in a nullified way, there is no effect, there is no intervention, like the way one has to formulate null hypothesis. Once after formulating the hypothesis, a researcher will move to the which test can be suitable, which test can be applicable to test the hypothesis. I mean to say appropriate test. Again, in statistics, There are many tests available. Among them, which is the appropriate test, one has to decide. Again, to decide, so there are different procedures we have to follow. So in the next slide, I'm just briefing them how to identify the appropriate test or to test the hypothesis. Once after identifying the appropriate test, a researcher will move towards the probability of making an error. So what we call actually level of significance. The level of significance is basically play a vital role in the research, because social science where research cannot be conducted without error free. I mean to say research is always carry an error. So every research is always consisting error. But too much of error which always makes research is senseless. Therefore, we have to have a control over the error. So control and acceptable level of error. What is the acceptable level of error in the social science research? So generally we say that there should not be error, but as we know, nobody can conduct a research without error. Yes, error is always an integral part of the research. But what should be the optimal or what should be the acceptable level of error? In traditional statistics, the error is always fixed in the form of level of significance. The level of significance alpha, that is nothing but the probability of rejecting the true null hypothesis. I mean to say, you are stating the hypothesis, you are testing it, but you are rejecting even though that is true. So through which you are making an error. Again, I will repeat, you are stating an hypothesis, testing it. After testing, you are rejecting it even though it is true. So I mean to say, your entire research process is resulting in rejecting the hypothesis, it is true. So you mean that you are making an error. That error is known as type 1 error. What is the probability of doing this? Out of 100 times, if I repeat the same experiment, if I am resulting in rejecting the hypothesis is already true, then it means that 5 times out of 100 is a 5% is the level of significance. So 5%, so level of significance, even it can be 1%, even it can be 10%. So researcher always has to take a call. What should be the level of significance to carry his research to make a type 1 error? Once after deciding the level of significance, so type 1 error, researcher also simultaneously can move toward the type 2 error, that is nothing but accepting the false null hypothesis. Even by accepting the false null hypothesis, researcher also do commit a mistake. That is known as type 2 error. It is denoted by beta. So the researcher in the step 3, he will define both alpha as well as beta. So type 1 error and type 2 error. Once after fixing the type 1 and type 2 error, you can go for calculating test statistics. Again, in statistics, lot of formulas are there. By using those appropriate tools and test and formula, you can compute the test value, and by computing the test value, you can move toward the step 5 and 6. In the step 5 and 6, what generally we do, so the calculated value what we have computed by using tools or by using any software, and the test value which has been computed by using the theoretical distribution. Because every statistics has its own theory. Based on no theory, there are some values are printed, there are values are obtained as a time. So what we have to do, we have to compare what the value that we have calculated with our empirical data by using the formula. What the values are available in the statistical theory for the particular test value. So that is a critical region. So we have to compare them. Once if a calculated value is more than critical region value, what inference? Once if a computed value less than the critical value, what we have to do? So like both decision we have to have clarity. So determine if a computed value, TS of a calculated value, if it is more than or less than, whether it is a false in a acceptance region or rejection region. I mean to say rejection or non-rejection region. Once after doing this in the step number 5 and 6, we can either reject or do not reject, depending upon whether it is false in rejection region or non-rejection region. Once after moving towards either rejecting or non-rejecting the hypothesis, we can go for drawing conclusion. This is the nutshell or brief explanation about entire process of hypothesis testing. Again, this slide is also discussed about hypothesis testing, but I have given each and every step in a word form and verbally, so we can have a look of it. Now, after moving from testing of hypothesis, steps of procedure testing of hypothesis, let us move actually what are the tests is available. Generally and broadly, hypothesis can be broadly put into two forms, parametric and non-parametric. The parametric is always associated with measurable variable metric data, and non-parametric data is always associated with the non-metric data. I mean to say qualitative variable, categorical variable. So in our context, we have taken older people. Whether does COVID-19 is vulnerable to the old people. So now I have to define operationally how I can define old. Now let us say, if I say old and younger or young people. So there are two variables, there are two words, two terms I've been using, old and younger. Now how to define old and young? Again, depending upon your operational definition acceptable in the world. So you can define old and young based on the age. Let's say for instance, age more than 60 as old, age less than 60 as young. Now let us move to the one of the case example where let us take Bangalore as an example. So in a one particular week, in a one particular day, how many people were affected by COVID-19? So let us say there are 100 people who are affected by COVID-19 in a day. Out of 100, how many old people, how many young people? Out of 100, there are 70 people who are affected, they are old, and 30 people who are affected, they are young. So now what is the proportion? The proportion is so the proportion of the old people who are affected by COVID-19 is 0.7 or 70%. 0.7. The proportion of old people who are affected by COVID-19, so old people, and proportion of young people. So this is young people. So now old and young. So now let us think very abruptly. I mean to say COVID-19 is do not have age bias. It is affecting both old and young. So it is significant. It is affecting both old and young in a similar fashion. If it is affecting both old and young people in a similar fashion, then this proportion, the 70% and 30%, there should not be any difference. The proportion should be equal to each other. If COVID-19 is affecting the old vulnerably than the young, then obviously it has an age bias. So in this case, it is old people is more vulnerable. Their proportion is higher than the young proportion. So then proportion of old is greater than the proportion of young. So now if there is no difference between the proportion of old people and proportion of young people who have been affected by COVID-19, this is nothing but null hypothesis. And the proportion of old is more vulnerable than the young, it is an alternative hypothesis. So my alternative hypothesis will say that there is more old people proportion is more than the young people proportion. So is a one direction greater than, I can say, one tile, and it is right tile. It is right tile. Again, this can be converted in other form. Like instead of saying that I don't have any specific direction, I have no knowledge about who have been affected great, who have been affected less, because there is no pre-study conducted by any other research agency or any other researchers. Therefore, instead of having more or less, I don't know actually who has been affected greater, who have been affected lesser. So I can say directly like there is no significant difference. So like a proportion of old and proportion of young, I don't have any preconceived knowledge about who have been affected vulnerably or not. Let us say, so both have been affected, but I don't know actually who have a great influence, so that I can say both are not equal to each other. So maybe old may be more, or young may be more, or maybe old may be less, or young may be less. There is no clarity about clarity about the proportion. If I say that not equal, it can be any possibility. Now this is two-tile test, because here the direction is actually two sides. Either it can be left side or either it can be right side. And again, this hypothesis, what we initially drawn or what we initially derivative over here, this can also be put into form of a proportion of old. Let us assume that COVID-19 is actually impacting the old in a lesser vulnerably than the young, then it can be taken in this form. Now it is again one direction but left type. So depending upon the kind of hypothesis you are formulating for your alternative, it can either one tile right test, two tile and one tile left test. So like one can actually formulate based upon his research objective. Once after formulating this, he should know whether the age is being distributed normal or not, because every statistical theory which has its own assumption. So based on the assumption, we have to choose which test is applicable or not. For example, age is a variable, whether it is old or young. If it is distributed in a bell shape in a normal form, then we can use parametric test. If it is not distributed in a bell shape in a normal form, then we can move on non-parametric test. But before using non-parametric test, one can also convert the variable which is not distributed normally into different form, like in a logarithmic form, square root form, reciprocal form, in different form. If you can able to make them into normal, then again you can stick on to parametric. Even if you by transferring them also, if it is not tend to be a normal, then we can pick the non-parametric test. So therefore, parametric and non-parametric, there are two tests where we can use for depending upon the kind of variable we have, whether we have a metric variable or a non-metric variable, whether our variable follows normal distribution assumption or not, based on which we can pick. Again, in your variable, in your hypothesis, do you have one sample or two samples? For example, in our data, age has been classified into two groups like young and old, and the sample of young and sample of old has been collected independently. Then we can say it is a two sample independent. If you have boys and girls, again their data has been collected independently, again independent sample. Otherwise, before exposing into virtual education, after exposing to virtual education, whether there is any improvement in the learning ability. So for example, A, B, C, D, so like A, B, C, D, E, 5 students before exposing into virtual education, what was their performance academically? After exposing into a virtual education, what was their performance? If there is an improvement, then again, so the samples are dependent, because the same sample has been taken in a two contexts, before and after experiment. So then we can say paired sample. Like the way we can pick which is the most appropriate test for my hypothesis, depending upon this kind of a classification. Once after identifying this classification, again we have to do, are we testing hypothesis of association or hypothesis of difference? Because in my context, in the previous context, proportion of younger, proportion of old, I am comparing whether the proportions are equal to each other or not equal to each other. So my test is basically whether there is any difference in the proportion of young and proportion of old. So this is nothing but testing of hypothesis of differences in the proportion. Therefore I can apply proportion test. Like the way one can compare the mean hypothesis, proportion hypothesis, distribution, like to test whether it is normally follows or not, or else one can also go for median and ranking comparison. Once after identifying all this, a researcher can move which tool can be applicable. Now in the present context, in this present scenario, so in our present example, let us say in this table t-test, or let us say our own example like performance, student performance, academic performance depends upon gender. Gender classified into two, male and female. Now what test I can apply? Here performance is my dependent variable. Gender is an independent variable, but it is qualitative, which consists in two groups. So independent variable which consists two groups, male and female. Performance is a variable which is dependent, which can be measurable. Gender is not measurable. Now in this case I can apply t-test, because t-test is required, as from this table t-test is required one dependent variable. Yes, dependent variable is only one, and this variable should be quantitative. Yes, this variable is quantitative, and t-test is applicable. Your independent variable is categorical. Yes, our independent variable is categorical. Let me again, t-test is applicable in the case you should have one dependent variable. Yes, I have one dependent variable. It should be quantitative. Yes, it is quantitative because performance can be measurable. Again, this t-test can be applicable in the case based on independent variable must be categorical. Yes, my independent variable is gender. Gender is a categorical. So how many independent variable? I have one independent variable. Yes, only one independent variable, that is gender, which consists of how many groups? Two groups. Now, yes, I can use t-test to address or to test this hypothesis. So now, in this way, we can also move to one-way ANOVA. When do we use one-way ANOVA? Again, one-way ANOVA can be used in the same scenario. Like a dependent variable should be only one. It depends upon one independent variable, which is a categorical. But instead of two groups, if you have three groups, then one can move one-way ANOVA. So one-way ANOVA can be applicable whenever your independent variable, single independent variable, which will be having three groups. So like the way one can decide which tool is applicable, which test is most appropriate to test our hypothesis based on the number of independent variable, number of dependent variable, nature of variable, whether it is a quantitative or a qualitative, and again, if it is qualitative, how many groups is there within the variable. So like the way one can decide. In this way, one can test the hypothesis. So this is the one of the brief explanation about our testing of hypothesis in terms of how to formulate hypothesis and how to decide which test is most appropriate to test the hypothesis. So by this way, I am ending the session. If you have any query, you can mail me. So the mail address, email ID will be given by the participants. And I thank to the organizer as well as active participation of the participants. Though it is a virtual class, so we are not able to interact with all of you. Show that actually you enjoy the session. Thank you very much.